How did the daughter of a Navy officer with a degree in zoology end up in the highest ranks of the CIA? What is it like briefing 5 different presidents of the United States on the most pressing national security challenges? The Honorable Susan Gordon, former Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, answers these questions and more. I'm your host, Hadeil Ali. Welcome to Driving Impact.
Driving Impact, an exclusive insight into the personal backgrounds and careers of trailblazers on the front lines of policy.
Sue, welcome to CSIS. What a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I'm delighted. One of my favorite organizations, and the chance to talk to you is a dream come true.
Thank you. Sue, I was telling a colleague of mine that I was getting the chance to interview you, and she said, Sue just drops gems every time you talk to her. So really excited to hear what you have to say about your journey and your incredible career.
Well, thanks. I'll give you my best.
Awesome. Sue, let's go back. When you were 10 years old, what were your aspirations? What did you want to be when you grew up as a 10-year-old?
I don't recall being anything other than happy. You know, I was a Navy kid, and back in the day, we moved every year and a half. For me, I loved it. It was like a new set of people I got to know. I loved sports, and back then, there weren't a lot of organized sports, but man, you could always go outside and play. And so I just mostly remember being happy and lucky and all those things. It was probably in 9th grade where I had a science teacher that just was amazing. And I think so many people have that same story, right? Judy Parsons, if you're still out there, Judy, thank you. And she made me want to be a scientist. And actually, she's the one that made me think that marine biology was the thing to do. So I think I had that, but mostly I was just living my best life and doing whatever kind of came across.
Enjoying moving around?
Yeah, I'm interested. Mostly I just remember being happy and busy.
Yeah. Do you remember what was your kind of favorite place growing up? I know it's not fair to pick favorites.
No. I think it was California. When was I there? Between 5th to 7th grade. And I think what I loved about it, not only was it Southern California, and come on, every day is a great day, but that's when I met a girl on the playground, and she was playing Foursquare, and I decided I'd play Foursquare, and she was the best athlete of boys and girls, and so she was kind of like the thing. And then I jumped in and played, and then we just became fast friends. She decided that I wasn't Susie anymore, I was Sue, so Kathy Vance is the one that gave me Sue. And we played sports together, we rode our bikes everywhere, and so I think I had the fondest memories of that time in California because it was all outside and it was different and it was free and it wasn't the East Coast. It was awesome.
I'm biased as well. I was born in California, so.
Oh, there you go.
So great place, absolutely. Sue, you mentioned growing up in a military household. What was that like, the values that you grew up with and your siblings?
So I think the first thing, if you are in my generation, if you're in a military family, it's about family. You know, you're moving a lot, and I have an older brother and older sister, and before you make friends, you know, you're a little unit. So family's super important. I think the values of responsibility, of doing something for the cause, of not complaining, working hard, being grateful, all those things, but mostly doing your best and doing something for the cause.
And you carried those values with you throughout your journey and career?
Oh, I tell people all the time, we are who we begin as. And so being the third kid as a naval officer has absolutely everything to do with who I am. From my first day when I didn't negotiate over my salary because, I don't know, I figured promoting would take care of itself. It didn't matter what I got on the first day to the last day I was there. So absolutely carried me through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you said in ninth grade you were thinking about being a scientist,
right.
And you go on to attend Duke University. What did you study there?
I went to study marine biology. They had a marine science lab on the East Coast, and there weren't many marine biology programs, and they were at lesser schools, and I wanted like the full college experience. And if I turned out not to be a marine biologist, I wanted a degree I could use. And so I went to Duke really to do that, but then I ended up playing basketball. I never had my springs free. I never did that. So I did the second best thing to marine biology. I got a degree in zoology and specialized in biomechanics, which is how living systems work, and functional morphology, how structure relates to function. So it's fun to say I'm a zoology major, and I was like, what? But truthfully, it's really the engineering of living systems that I did.
When you told people this throughout your career that you had a degree in zoology, were they surprised? Or?
Totally.
Yeah. They don't typically see this.
They
right?
don't, and it isn't common. It doesn't immediately translate. And people today, I think, have a harder time than I did having a non-expected background and still getting in. I mean, it's one of the things I loved about the CIA was they cared more about performance than pedigree.
Yeah. It's embracing non-traditional backgrounds, right? That not everyone has to have a traditional path. Not everyone has to study political science or international affairs to be welcomed in this space and have their contributions be valued. Yeah. So not only you study and you get a degree in zoology at Duke, Sue, but you also play basketball. I mean, what was that like playing basketball at Duke? And I know you're representing here with the Carolina Blue, but what was that like?
So if I had one overwhelming sense of my whole life, including to this day, I'm just super lucky. I'm just super lucky. So I got to play basketball at Duke in the most fascinating 4 years, I think, in women's athletics, where when I started playing, it was all the women who just loved playing sports. And by the time my 4 years ended, everyone was on scholarship except me and the other seniors. So I got to see us go from kind of like high school plus to really the same game that they play now. And so getting to my last year getting Nike shoes that said Duke on the back, but my sophomore year having to paint Cameron Indoor Stadium to get money for travel, I got to see that whole
evolution.
I know, right? And see that whole arc and know what it took to get there. I think that's why you have so many women of my generation who are sometimes judgy about the women of this generation who, and it's okay, who seem to not remember what it was like to not have it.
I think it's that balance, right, Sue, between it's okay to want more.
Right, totally. And it's good, and I love it. I loved watching this year's NCAA. And they're so brash, and they're woofing at each other, and I love it. And it's nothing that was the game when I have. And so kind of watching the two of those, I don't know, it was a great time.
That other side of also acknowledging how far we've come.
And how amazing women are, and how bold they are, and how prepossessed they are. I love walking around college campuses, looking at women athletes just super proud of their physiques and it's fun.
You got to be also the captain, I believe the only 3-year captain in the team's history. I mean, what sort of lessons did you take away about leadership during that time?
So I think sports, for me, if my foundation is my family and the lessons learned there, probably who I am as a leader is most determined by athletic participation. I love sports. They teach you to be able to deal with conflict really productively. It teaches you how to be depended on and how to depend on others. And think about that, to allow your whole fate to be in someone else's hands and to understand that their whole fate is in yours. I think that does things. It teaches you how to commit to the point of failure, because if you don't do that, you'll never improve. And we see this all the time in the workplace. People save something so they don't look bad or they don't make a mistake. I think athletics teaches you, if you really want to find out, you have to commit to the point of failure. And then what isn't often talked about, obviously I'm a cool kid because I was the 3-year captain of Duke. I never started a game except the senior game. I, in fact, only earned a letter 2 of the years, so I am a never starter who was a 3-year captain. And how do you explain that? You can kind of get it my senior year, the happy hard worker. What do you do about a sophomore that doesn't? And I think through my teammates, what I learned is that value and role aren't the same.
Value and role are not the same.
Right?
Yeah.
So I had a role. And then I think the last thing, I think that's where I learned that outcome was more important. Focusing on outcome, ensuring that was more important than getting what I wanted.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more so about the point about sports. I played sports growing up. That was something that was very important to my parents because of the life lessons. I ended up playing tennis in college.
Oh, where?
But small school, Drury, in the Midwest.
Sure.
And it really was about leadership. I ended up being the captain as well. It's about the lessons that you learn, navigating, talking to your teammates. It's also very much about mental toughness. How do you navigate winning, but also losing, right? And a lot of these themes come up in life, in relationships, in the workplace, right?
In 1 week, my sophomore year, we were 1-19. It was the first year we had scholarship players. The first year we were playing really big schools, and we went 1-19. And in 1 week, we lost by 50 to Clemson, 70 to Maryland, and 82 to North Carolina State. You go through that, and then by your senior year, you've got a winning team. It tells you what you have now is not what you have to have, right? Yeah, so many lessons.
It takes so much strength and resilience, and how do you bounce back from that, right? And the role of the team, the captain, but the coach as well. And I think about that, the coach or the manager, right, in a workplace situation, or a leader, right, and how they drive the team. So I will never forget when I first emailed you to tell you about this show, Driving Impact. You told me that you loved the title so much, right? Because you said, in fact, leadership isn't about what we are or what we say, but it's about what we make happen, right? And you see that through sports, but also throughout your whole career, what you made happen constantly.
Yeah, I think somewhere along the way in my career, I became the person you hired if you wanted something done.
Why do you think that's the case?
I think I predisposed to see the future always and want to be relevant. I just think I think I'm designed that way. That's the way I think of it. I think also because I always believed that I was supposed to do the job I was asked, and I never protected myself in the course of doing that. And so if you can do that, if you can see the future, then you understand not only the job you're doing, but the job you're doing. If you're fearless about it, you believe you're supposed to. Your boss said do this, and you're like, oh, okay, I guess I'm supposed to do that. And so when you get obstacles, you just overcome them. And then if you love leading people, here's the coolest thing about leadership that I've discovered. If you set a point, your people will never let you down. Ever. So I don't know.
It goes back also to what you were saying about family values, because you talked about responsibility.
Yep.
Leadership is about responsibility, that support, mentorship for people that are not only working for you, but working with you, right, and alongside.
For sure. I think that's a great point. I didn't say it nearly that well, and I'll probably steal the way you did going forward, and I'll probably give you credit for like 6 weeks or something like that.
That's good enough for me.
I think you have to be responsible to your people. I think you have to be responsible to your mission, right? Not for, that's an entirely different emotion than being responsible to, right? And the other thing I never believed is that especially working in the government, we had different jobs, but we weren't fundamentally different. So they were not there to support me. They were not there to make sure things went well for me. I actually thought my job was to exactly that.
Yeah. So how did you end up in the CIA? Did you find them? Did they find you? I mean, how did that all happen?
Well, so I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. We have discovered that Sue is not one of the people that plans out her career. It's kind of like my whole career story. There I was walking down the road when, someone stopped me and said, "Hey, would you like to?" And I say yes. So I thought I was going to go get my PhD in biomechanics. I love science. I love the mystery of life. But I also thought I might want to go to law school because I love arguing. Like I wanted to say, there everyone rings around you logically. And I thought, well, that's just too big a range to choose one, so why don't you go get a job? I think because my dad was in the Navy, public service kind of came about. And then it turned out the year I joined, Stan Turner was the director of the CIA, and my dad had worked with him in 1966, so I knew of him. And then CIA was recruiting on campus, and so I thought, well.
They were at Duke?
Yeah.
What year was that?
79. Summer of 79.
And what was your first job?
My first job was supposed to be doing analysis of Soviet biological warfare. So that makes sense, right? I have a degree in zoology. I do critters. That's kind of related. But it was 1980, and kind of like now, we were downsizing, and it was a time of change. So I got there, and I was shiny. I was 21 years old. I mean, I'm old now, but man, I look 12. I look at my EOD picture. It's like, oh, my God, they let her. And I came in, they said, bad news, you don't have a job. We'll give you 30 days to find new work, or you won't have work here. So I wandered around the building and talked to people. I discovered then that I would not be good at human recruitment, at least at that age, because I blush and giggle when I lie. And I didn't fundamentally understand that it's not about convincing people to do what you wouldn't do. It's actually giving them the opportunity to achieve their ends. So time was running short, and in the Office of Scientific and Weapons Research, there was a job for a junior Soviet missile analyst, and I said, well, I can do that, because really mechanical engineering is just applied zoology. And
so it worked out.
So it worked out.
It worked out, yeah. You said that intelligence is never what people think. So what was that like in terms of what expectations you had entering the CIA, and then what actually you ended up discovering?
So the CIA, particularly then, so mission-driven, such a big culture organization, that we're still on the back end of the Cold War. My first bosses were the people that were there when scientific analysis and collection was really formed. So my first bosses were the Wizards of Langley. So you feel it there. You feel the importance of the mission. There was nothing I was doing that was like what you see in movies, but you still had the feeling of responsibility for providing advantage. So there was, at that time, a growing, what would be incredibly rich history of technical analysis, and I got to be a part of that.
Part of it, yeah. I imagine, so at the time, there weren't a lot of women working then. How was that like, navigating that space as a woman? Were there even conversations about that topic at the time?
It was, so my office was about 800, and I think we had maybe 3 professional women in the office of 800.
3 women out of 800
About
staff.
800.
Wow.
I'll tell you what, there was one woman that was senior to me, and I was just in awe of her. She was hell on wheels. She was smart and driven and wonderful. So there weren't a lot. There weren't many that were in leadership. And there weren't really many in leadership who were like me, young, married, with a family coming a long way. But you know what? I didn't care. I can look back on it and realize that it was a difficult environment. I just wanted to be good. And if I could give one piece of advice to anybody, it's focus on being good, that organizations don't actually have souls. I wish they did. I wish they cared. No, I wish they cared more. What they want is they want good work done. So every person they hire, on the day they hire you, they want you to be good. And so I focused on being really good at my job. And to be good at your job is not just being good looking down at your work. It's looking at your work and saying, okay, I understand what this is a part of. So I spend some time doing that.
It's also taking that step back, right? The strategy piece,
Right.
Understanding the mission,
Right.
as well, and how that work contributes.
I think I didn't really notice the disproportionate male population until I got into more senior leadership, where you start seeing how decisions are being made that aren't just based on the work. But man, when you start, in a way, in 1980 and in the early 80s, I thought it was, if you were going to be good, it was easier to be a woman because there were so few that if you were good, you were better, you were seen. Now, the downside is if you were bad, you were worse, which isn't tolerable. But for me, it was just focus on the hand. Plus, I think because I had brothers, because I played sports, there was a comfort that I had in a male culture that I certainly used. But again, over time, you can't trust people's success to whether they fit in, and so you have to keep working on the environment. But for me, it did okay.
Yeah. And so, as you said, as you became more senior, and then you end up becoming the principal deputy director of national intelligence, did you ever feel like an imposter having studied zoology at Duke, being a woman? I mean, what was that like? Did you always feel like I deserve to be here? Or was it hard at times?
I don't think I ever had the time to think about whether I deserved to be there or not. And because I was so lucky that I had bosses that gave me hard jobs early and taught me how to feel the weight, that from the time I was 25, I was doing really big projects. Mm-hmm. And so in the culture of the CIA, man, it's like I've described it as playing pickup basketball with guys. When you play pickup basketball with girls, we share the ball. We're about shared purpose. When you play pickup basketball with guys, if you don't do something with the ball, you're not going to get the ball again. The obverse of that is the people around you allow you to do something with the ball, and that was the CIA for me. So I think I was lucky enough to have big jobs early. I was good enough to recognize I was supposed to do something with them. I think the most surprising thing that people would know is I spent a career doing jobs I didn't know how to do. Like every time I got a new job, I didn't know how to do it. So I came as a zoologist. I started doing analysis of Soviet spacecraft, and then I went and built U.S. spacecraft, and that wasn't what I learned how to do. So you have to learn how to do that.
So what was that transferable skill? I mean, what allowed you to be able to do these different jobs?
You're not stuck with the knowledge you have, right? So go back to the comments about being a Navy kid. Okay, that's where you are. You better grow. And because I did so many different jobs, I didn't do one job in different places. I did building jobs in lots of different places, but because I can't stand to not be good, I learned how to do those skills. And so how did you get to be the person that people hire to do things? Because they know that if you give me a job. But to your point of kind of imposter, every time I was asked to do a job, it's like, I don't know how to do that.
But you felt like you could get there.
Yes, and you bring what you had to every job. So especially as I started getting more senior and having more people, when I made the move from kind of technical analysis and collection discipline over to be the director of support at the CIA, no one on the support side of the house had any idea who I was. They knew kind of that I'd been hired to downsize them by 10%. And I knew nothing about the craft and discipline of support. So how do you take that job on? Do you think you can wait to lead? You can't. There are a lot of people who think you can. So how do you lead even though you know you're not going to lead by telling these professionals their job? So what you do is you bring what you know how to do. And over time, I learned how to set a vision
And learn from them, too.
Inspire, and then trust them.
Yeah, trust them.
Right.
Yeah. What was the most important lesson you learned about leadership throughout your career?
Probably if they're not following, you're not leading. And what I mean by that is we all have a leadership style we prefer. We have responsibilities as leaders. We all think that everyone's like us. And so whatever our preferences are the ones that they have. And director of support job, again, was one where on the literal scale, I am not on it. On the bear catcher to bear skinner scale, I am well beyond a bear catcher. And that's how I lead. Like, we're gonna go there. And someone will say, well, what's step one? And I'm like, I don't know. Do you need a step one? No, we're just going to go there. In the director of support, they didn't know what to do with me. They are such a wonderful culture of service, and they wanted to do what I said, but I wasn't being useful. And after about 3 months, I realized that they were disappointed because they felt that they could never please me. And so that was just a great day to say, no, my leadership style has no import.
Yeah.
It's how do I lead them. So
that's
probably my best.
Yeah, that's a great example. I mean, as I think more about leadership, I think about the many times you briefed presidents, right? You briefed 5 out of the last 6 presidents. I mean, what was that experience like? How did, again, those leadership lessons show up as you were doing that work? But again, the responsibility piece, I think back to it as well, right? The responsibility that what you're telling the president is going to make an impact on decisions that will be made. So intelligence, it's like the best, truest discipline. And I say this as a career intelligence officer. I'm sure there are other people that believe different things. But all you have to do is to see what is, not what you prefer, and to represent that truth as best you can until the decision maker hears it so that they can use it, right? And you don't have policy responsibility, you don't have others. And so, in a way, even though every president is the same because they're different, President Obama, you'd go into brief and he'd read your stuff and you might not say a word, and then he might not even ask you questions. Oh,
right. President Reagan was like your grandfather, right? He was just, he would tell you stories along the way. President Trump, it was a romp, but you still have the job to do. You have to figure out how to represent your information in a way that they can hear. So I think it's a relatively easy transition for an intelligence officer, because all you're really trying to do is say, how do I get it heard, rather than I have to worry about it.
Tell me more about President Trump. So you had a typed resignation letter, but also a handwritten resignation letter. Tell us more about what happened and why you chose to write these 2 letters.
So it was a hard time for me. The president decided that he was going to ask Dan Coates to leave. And that was okay. Dan was a political appointee. By the way, he did a really wonderful job as playing intelligence straight down the middle, which is really what you mostly want. I was statutorily supposed to take that position, but the president decided he didn't want me to. And so for me, unlike Dan, who was losing a job, I was losing a career. So that was a reasonably hard time. Congress was trying to get me to not resign so that they could try and talk him into keeping me. But the day came where it became apparent that he was not going to keep me on. And so back to my third kid of a naval officer. If you're a third kid of a naval officer and your boss who hired you says he no longer wants you, you give a cheery aye and you move along. So I write a resignation letter, but it was really for the intelligence community, because it was one thing to lose Dan, but I will humbly say to lose me was a lot bigger. Like, oh my God, if Sue can't make it, who's going to do it? So I wanted to write the resignation letter mostly to tell them it would be okay, and to tell the
that's
president.
leadership.
Yeah, right. You know, we have who we are, and in a crisis, it's who you are. But your responsibility is still to the mission and to the community. And so that letter was really to them. And I was going down, because I think he was going to go to Bedminster, and I didn't want to miss him because it felt like I'd be rude if I just dropped a letter. So I went down to the White House. And as I'm about to go down there, I'm like, what if he's not there? I don't want to just drop a typewritten letter off, because that, again, feels disrespectful. So I went back to my office and I dashed off this handwritten note. And really what it was is to just say, Mr. President, you don't have to do this. You know, that I will step away, but I'm doing so out of patriotism, not out of preference. But both were about who I am as a human, my responsibility to my community, and not wanting to burn down the house on the way out the door.
Do you feel like you did the right thing looking back?
Yeah, I think I did. I think I was true to myself, and I think the intelligence community, as I knew it would, it's the strength is in the women and men, and they do their job wonderfully. For me, I felt like I've left my mates in the foxhole without me. It's been hard to deal with that, especially for the next couple of years. It was hard. But I think I did the only thing that was available to me, and I think I did it in a manner that did not bring discredit on the community.
Yeah. So when you said I wasn't only, losing a job, it was about a career as well, right? I mean, how was it like navigating, balancing a career and then a family, right? Because you were married throughout your career, and I think there was a time where you stopped working for 8 years, and you made that choice to raise, your children. I think about the challenges of navigating, making such a decision as a woman. How? I don't know how. One, let's be clear. Duke gave me the 3 things that are the most important to me. They taught me how to think. They gave me my lifelong friends who are my basketball teammates, and I met the love of my life. And if I was able to do what I did, it's because I married Jimmy Gordon, and he's a saint and the best dad ever. I would cheat time. For the first 20 years of my career, I would use every minute that I wasn't a mom when they couldn't see that I wasn't there being a mom, going back and doing work. So I was great at both. And it worked out for 19 years. It was awesome. And then one day when my son was 14, it became apparent to me that I couldn't both be as good a mom as I wanted to be and as good an employee. And I'm an in or out gal, so I gave 2 weeks' notice. Super easy decision to make, absolutely impossible decision to make, because I loved what I did. I resigned. I didn't take leave without pay and walked away. Never regretted it. Left to keep my son from being an idiot. During the years, discovered my daughter, who I probably would have missed because she was just so balanced and easy. I think she would just swung by. It makes me think a lot. I don't know if you've ever read this article, Sue, in The Atlantic. I think it was 2012. Anne-Marie Slaughter wrote this article, Why Women Can't Have It All.
Yeah.
Right? You have to make compromises. You can't have the family, the career, everything, and the compromises.
I guess, but see, I see it differently.
Yeah. Tell me more.
My book title would be The Key to Happiness is Believing You Have Choice. The key to success is understanding there are consequences of those choices, and you don't control any of them. So I've got to make the choice that I needed to leave. The reason I was successful because I didn't ask the organization to give me what it could. And I didn't say, hey, I'd like to go take time with my family. Could you hold my job for you? Hold my job for me. Could you do it? And so because I see it so clearly, I think about the choice I'm making, and if I make that choice, well, then that's the choice I want to be, and I'm going to be happy, and I don't regret the other things there. The other thing, I think we spend a lot of time talking about work-life balance, and if I think I have incredible work-life balance. People would laugh, given that I probably work 22 hours a day. To me, work-life balance is, do you feel fulfilled at everything you do? And I have always. when I left, they offered me jobs that were not meaningful. I would have hated that. I would have resented every day of not doing meaningful jobs. So what I encourage women to do is don't be afraid to make a choice. Mm-hmm. And you are going to not do so many more things in your life that you're going to do, that don't worry about what you're not doing for that time. Because I go away for 8 years and I come back to one of the greatest second acts of all time. Mm-hmm. So, I don't know, make choices, be happy in them, accept consequence, and move forward.
Yeah, believe in the agency
Yep.
that you have as well.
Mm-hmm.
Sue, I know you brought a wonderful memento to share with us, something that represented a meaningful moment in your career. Could you please first describe to us what you brought, and why did you decide to share this with us?
So I brought an old pneumatic tube that used to carry messages around the CIA before we had email. There are a lot of things that are special about this to me. Number one, I have it because a job I had as a director of support, and so when the tubes were being pulled out, there were a bunch of tubes, and I was able to take one. And the reason that's special to me is, man, I may have spent a career doing cyber and engineering and collection and information operations and a whole bunch of things, but the only job I really hated leaving was support, because the women and men that make the quiet that left mission happen. So the fact that I have an artifact of that time. But the other thing that I love about it is this is the way we used to do mail. There are people that love the tubes. There are people that hated email when it came in. And it reminds me that how we used to do things is not the way we have to do things. Mm-hmm. And that even though you can love the past, that would no longer be a relevant way to move things around. So to me, it's also emblematic of that.
The ability to evolve and innovate,
yep.
Right? I mean, it also makes me think about all the changes that are happening, right, in our society, whether it be emerging technologies, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, and how and what we're doing to adapt to all these different challenges. I mean, how do you foresee how these challenges are threatening maybe our national security? Are they? I mean, what are...
Oh, it's a super disrupted world. We are at a moment that is so different from others. There have been other disrupted times, but this is surely one of them, that we're not going to be able to draft off the work of our predecessors. We're going to have to create anew. And so it's this moment of kind of strategic uncertainty, whether all this stuff that's swirling around, that we haven't yet figured out how it's going to coalesce into either society or advance, I think is disquieting. It is a technical world. It is a world where all the threats and opportunities go through information. It is a connected world, and that changes everything from geopolitics to the nature of intelligence to the nature of conflict. And so it's like you've got to be expert at technology. You've got to remember what intelligence is fundamentally providing. You've got to figure out how to do it differently. Every technology is available to everybody, so anything we advance is equally available. So it's a fraught time, but it's a great time. Like, these moments are when we make the leaps. I probably only have one great worry about it, is that we're teetering on the edge of not believing in ourselves, and we shouldn't not believe in ourselves simply because how we used to do it doesn't work anymore. But I think that's a worrisome trend, and it's one that I think the national security community needs to help us understand.
Yeah. I love what you said, Sue, strategic uncertainty. I see it as a time of responsibility, right?
Oh, for sure. With
all that's happening, and how are we going to move forward?
And how do we stay true to who we are? I think one of the most interesting things is, humans don't like not knowing. And there are plenty of times when we have chosen to escalate government privilege in order to make us safer or feel better about ourselves. I just think this is a time where, while we're figuring out, we still have to remember fundamentally who we are and trust that.
Absolutely. Sue, we talked a lot about advice for women and young girls, right? And you're involved with Girls Security, an incredible organization.
Amazing.
I've gotten the chance to mentor young girls in high school
Aren't they lucky?
or in college. They're incredible. I mean, the resilience. Talk about resilience. What advice do you typically give them if they're interested in pursuing a career in policy and they see it as a space that's more male-dominated, or they don't feel like they belong there? I mean, what do you tell them?
I just think, one, people aren't going to have my career anymore. I wouldn't encourage anyone to spend 35 years in the same organization, just go straight through it.
It's not very common anymore, right?
It's not very common, and I'm just not sure it's the best way to do it, because there are things you need to learn on the outside. But I will say, man, participating in the government, particularly national security, it is a discipline of purpose. And especially for the kids I see coming up now, they are people of purpose. And I think we need to talk more about what it really is at its essence, that it isn't an ethnocentric, militaristic view. It's this time. 2, talk about this moment of uncertainty and their chance to make a difference. And then 3, I think you want to feel the weight of responsibility. This is a great way to start.
Yeah, absolutely. Purpose, uncertainty, right? This opportunity, right? In time of uncertainty, and then finally responsibility. I mean, I can't emphasize enough your points too about purpose. I think communicating even more for government agencies to communicate even more, right? How much of an impact you can make, right? The mission-driven piece of the work, right? Sue, to close, we like to ask our guests 3 questions every episode of Driving Impact, rapid fire style. Are you ready?
I am.
Gotta
shake it out.
What are 3 words you would use to describe your career?
Spectacular, surprising, and humbling.
In your opinion, what does it mean to be American?
Consent of the governed. Think about that. We, the people, have the power. We, the people, have both the opportunity and the responsibility, and that's what it is to be an American.
And what is giving you hope right now?
Oh my gosh, everything, right? No, seriously. Maybe it's being old enough to have seen things that I didn't think we would survive, right? I was 6 years old. We did duck and cover drills because we were sure thermonuclear war was going to be what ended us all. And I was there the day after 9/11 when we were sure we'd never look up in the sky without thinking that a plane was going to come in. And we had no idea how we were going to collect intelligence on these guys. And this is a different time, but we have been in these times before. And I will say the fact that women and men still choose to serve. They don't serve the same way. I mean, national security is so much bigger tent now, right? It's being in academia, it's advancing technology, it's doing policy, and yes, it's actually working in the government, but it doesn't have to be.
I think your point is very important, and being at CSIS, a defense and national security think tank, that the definition of national security has evolved through time. Now we have conversations about climate change, about food security. Those are all part of this question of national security.
Yeah, right? Economic security. So I'm not naive about how difficult these times are, but I look around and every day, every person I meet gives me belief that we've got a way forward.
Yeah. It has been such an honor, Sue, to talk to you, but most importantly, it's just been such a fun conversation. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn more about your story and your incredible career.
It was a delight. Nice to meet you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining our conversation with the Honorable Sue Gordon on how she became a visionary leader and an expert in national intelligence. Do you want to hear more exclusive stories from policy leaders? Be sure to follow Driving Impact on YouTube, Spotify, or CSIS.org.